and just or actually, I will introduce you first. Hannah, I actually met through Emily West, who sends her love. She's on vacation on a houseboat actually today. But Hannah has been a coach. How long have you been doing this now, actually? I don't know the.
I've been an ADHD coach since 2018.
Yeah, amazing. So has really, I'm sure seen a lot in terms of what's all unfolded, even culturally over the last while,
Yeah.
and is here to really help us understand how we can support our clients. She's worked in a school and with kiddos, and then has now just left to launch her own coaching company that she'd been doing for a while already, anyways. So an exciting juncture professionally for her. And yeah, just really excited to learn. I know this is a hot topic around here always. So
I'm glad to hear it.
yeah, thank you, Hannah.
Yeah, thank you so much for that introduction. I will give you a little bit more information about my background in just a moment, but I've been so excited all summer to join with the Self Space team and to talk about an area that I feel incredibly passionate about, which is ADHD and executive functioning challenges in women and female identifying individuals. Um, there are so many elements to explore that fall under this umbrella. And so today, my hope is to catch your interest or continue your interest in this and develop an area, a space that we have some shared understanding and some helpful shared tools for you to either feel validated in what you're already doing or to carry into your practice. Let's see. So, as I said, I feel strongly about making sure that there's a shared understanding of how ADHD presents in women because it's so unique. We'll have a couple opportunities to explore the real life, the lived experiences, and commonly seen challenges of women with ADHD and executive dysfunction. And then we'll talk about some strategies, and throughout we'll touch on some strategies that I think are really accessible and really, really impactful that you can consider using in your practices. So when I have my hair down, it's bigger. This is me. I'm Hannah Asher, and I've been working as an educator in different contexts and capacities since 2013. I've been an ADHD coach since 2018, as Rachel just mentioned. And my passion for learning and the way that people are motivated to learn and to use their brains led to me completing my master's in educational psychology from George Mason University in 2018. And prior to that, completing my yoga teacher certification in 2015. So I've been really lucky to have this interesting intersection of the scientific, educational aspect of how brains work, and then the hands-on mindfulness and yoga practice. I am really passionate about supporting women with ADHD and related challenges because of the complexities that we see and that are experienced, the societal impacts and challenges that women come across when seeking information about and seeking help for ADHD, and the very present need for ADHD support that considers the unique experiences of women in the world we live in, and those experiences that continue to get more complex and interesting. When I'm not talking about my love of ADHD, I am a horse rider, I run, I do yoga. I love cooking, art, traveling, really anything that rings my own dopamine bell in my own ADHD brain. And when we, as we look at this workshop, as we go through this workshop, I hope that you will consider that this is designed to enhance but not replace clinical care. So it's not meant to stand in the way of what you are doing, instead, to be as a tool and a resource for you. I think it's super important and helpful to start our conversation with a working definition of ADHD, because our understanding of ADHD is always evolving, and it can have such a wide variety of presentations, even in one single person. Also, as I'm sure lots of you see in your own lives and hear from your clients, there is a lot of information available about ADHD. Some that is scientifically grounded, some that is based on individual experiences. And this has started to lead to lots of self-diagnoses and also just self-consideration and exploration. So, what many of us know as ADHD is ADHD stands for attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, and it's a neurodevelopmental disorder. There are three areas of ADHD. There's the sort of stereotypical, when you think of ADHD, hyperactive type, which is lots of energy, buzzing around, lots of movement, talking, blurting, etc. There's inattentive type, which can be characterized by losing track of time more frequently, what might be labeled as spacing out, in la la land, etc. And then there's combined type, so a combination of those two. ADHD is a neurodevelopmental disorder, and that falls into a group of conditions that affect brain development and function and lead to challenges in learning, communication, and behavior, which we see all over ADHD symptoms. Neurodevelopmental disabilities are distinct from mental illnesses, but they can co-occur. So it's important to keep in mind that ADHD is not simply a behavioral issue. Instead, it's a neurological difference that can significantly affect a person's life. Now, more boots on the ground in practice, ADHD is a difficulty that an individual has with executive functioning. And while we hear the term executive functioning a lot, and we see it all the time over social media and in different articles, when I'm talking about executive functioning, I am describing a set of skills and cognitive processes that help us identify, plan for, and carry out tasks, goals, and intentions. These skills are critical and crucial for everyday tasks, from getting ready in the morning to completing complex projects. And the main three categories of executive functioning are working memory, cognitive flexibility, and inhibitory control. So those sort of characterize all of the skills needed for functioning in life. Now, bringing ADHD to a slightly more personal perspective, I think that ADHD is a misnomer. When I work with ADHD clients, I actually see no deficit, no lack of attention. I think a better description is that it is a misapplication of attention. It is a misplacement of focus, attention, and energy. And it means that it's harder to control attention or direct it to certain tasks. Another powerful description, I think, is the misalignment of actions and intentions. So you have things that you want to do, you have goals that you want to complete, but you struggle to behave in a way that aligns, that matches up with those outcomes that you desire. And while ADHD symptoms begin in childhood and can look like difficulty focusing, trouble sitting still, impulsive behaviors, and more, it presents all throughout life and can evolve and change throughout a person's life. Before we move on, any questions? Okay. So just by a show of hands, I would love to know, off the top of your heads, how many folks in this call today either work with ADHD diagnosed clients or suspect ADHD that is undiagnosed in a client? Awesome. Oh, yay. Okay. Oh, there are more people on this call than I realized. Yay. Thank you all for raising your hands. There's always that little moment in, like a participant poll like this where you're like, I have this great question, and you would like worry nobody's going to raise their hand. So I'm so glad. Yeah, this is something that so frequently comes up in therapy contexts, in workplaces, educational places, families, relationships, whatever, wherever somebody is. This is something that's really, really common. Unfortunately, for a lot of women, ADHD can be overlooked, missed, and totally misunderstood, especially when compared to men. Only 5.6% of women and girls are diagnosed with ADHD, while 12.9% of men and boys are diagnosed. A late or misdiagnosis is common due to behaviors like masking, perfectionism, and people pleasing. When we talk about the experience of being a woman in the world, we can think about high achieving women with excessive focus on work and achievement. Women often have strong verbal skills and excellent social adaptation and may have their ADHD mislabeled as anxiety, depression, trauma response, etc. And I would say, after the majority of my female clients come to me after years of quality treatment for anxiety and depression related diagnoses, but with limited success. So most of the women I work with have been in therapy, have worked with wonderful providers, and have made progress, but haven't made as much progress or haven't been able to continue the habits and patterns they've built in therapy. We also see that ADHD may be missed or misdiagnosed because of the cultural expectations of women, like the expectations to be organized, to do the emotional labor in a family or a workplace, to act as caregivers. All of these may mask the underlying executive dysfunction. And many women with ADHD are high achieving or socially skilled. So this can mask challenges and is often labeled as anxious, depressed, or traumatized without anybody fully recognizing the underlying executive dysfunction. When we consider what ADHD looks like, how it presents, it might not look like hyperactivity. It might not look like that highly energetic, constantly moving, constantly talking stereotype of ADHD. It often presents as an internal restlessness or overthinking or emotional reactivity. I frequently hear this expressed in terms like overwhelmed, paralyzed, being told they're too sensitive, or telling themselves they're too sensitive, or constantly feeling stuck. We often see women who are experiencing disorganization, burnout, and cycles of shame, which may look like shutting down, cluttered spaces, negative self talk, and working until exhaustion. It also presents as task avoidance, procrastination, lack of motivation, and time management. And interestingly, research suggests that individuals with ADHD may have a less efficient dopamine reward pathway. So this makes it harder for them to experience the positive, good, fuzzy feelings associated with completing tasks. The good feeling of, okay, I did accomplish 10 things today. Instead, they're focused on all the things they haven't done or need to do. And many adults with ADHD struggle with something called time blindness. And one of the ways that we can understand time blindness is that their brains categorize time as right now and later or not now. So there are two categories. There's, okay, everything that's right here in front of me or in my consciousness, that's great. And everything else, that'll happen, but it's not quite real. And this replaces the ability to more easily conceptualize the meaning and actual value of time. Okay, I'll pause for questions. And if no questions pop up yet, or even if they do, I would love to know if any particular clients are coming to mind, or any clients you hadn't initially thought about are now coming to mind.
I have a question.
Yeah, hi, Kelly.
Hi, Hannah, right?
Mhm.
Okay. As you list this out, I'm also thinking about my clients who wonder about, who hit a lot of these, identifiers,
Yeah,
and uh, who also talk about rejection sensitivity.
yeah.
So, I just want to throw that out there because that's something I'm interested in and curious
Yeah.
about.
Yeah, thank you for bringing that up. Rejection sensitivity is a fascinating and growing area that people are exploring. It's something that I am still learning a lot about because it's complex and it's also, as far as I understand, not yet in the DSM-5. It's not a diagnosable. And your group as therapists, if I am wrong about it being the DSM, please tell me. But it is something that comes up frequently. And from my perspective, what one of the things I see is when we consider ADHD being a mismanagement of attention, a mismanagement of focus, one way that that's often described is like wherever you put your focus and attention, that grows to be the biggest thing in your brain, in your world, essentially. And so if you are constantly bringing your attention to the negative, to the little awkward interaction you had, or not getting the job, or whatever it is, then that can grow and grow and grow and become the biggest thing in your consciousness, right? And so sometimes some work around bringing awareness to that, wherever your focus is the biggest thing. And then practicing shifting that focus, not ignoring it, but shifting it to something that may feel more constructive, may feel more in your control, can be a really useful way to start shifting away from that rejection sensitivity.
Okay.
Yeah. Does that answer sort of touch on what you were asking?
Yeah. I mean, I, I'm still absorbing what you're saying. So like,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah.
Yes.
And I just, yeah, I wanted to sort of just put that out there to see like if there's, more about that, like recognizing
Yeah.
that, or if that's like a feature of it, but it sounds like it can
Yeah.
be, it's in with the attention piece of it. So,
Yeah. And I'll say that is really just my take on it, just because my area of focus is the ADHD side, but RSD, rejection sensitivity disorder, is something that is often hand in hand with ADHD.
okay,
Yeah.
great. Thank
Yeah.
you.
Thanks, Kelly. Any other questions before we move on?
Hi.
Hi,
I'm
Zoe.
not sure if this is entirely a question, but I was just thinking about how you were talking about the misdiagnosis that
Yeah.
can often happen. And I'm thinking about a recent training that I did with EMDR and that having a focus on complex PTSD and
Mm-hmm.
how ADHD and CPTSD are so similar. And
Yeah.
if you have any thoughts about that, I would love to hear it.
Yeah. Thank you, Zoe. Um, one one perspective that I have heard from one of my like ADHD, um I'm a fangirl of this ADHD expert, a guy named David Noel, Nowell. And I apologize if it's really loud. The garbage truck is going by my window right now. So it'll be gone in a second. Um, One perspective from him is that there are conditions that can be considered top down conditions and bottom up conditions. Is this something that in in your worlds you're more familiar with? Okay, awesome. So that's one perspective. In addition to that, and luckily, um, ADHD coaching and skills around executive functioning are safe and beneficial for anybody, regardless of what brings them to that kind of support. So, a lot of what we are talking about, while I bring it to you within the framework of ADHD, is still going to be relevant and beneficial to individuals who have complex experiences of trauma. So that's one of the things that I think is always really exciting about this work and what we talk about, because executive functioning skills are rarely taught explicitly. They're just assumed as folks go through school and go into the workforce. It's assumed that you pick up these skills. One last thought about your question is oftentimes folks who have the neurodevelopmental disorder of ADHD may seek out higher adrenaline or dangerous experiences that could theoretically lead to danger or traumatic experiences. Also, because ADHD has a genetic factor to it, they may come from families that have those similar patterns. Dopamine seeking, meaning excitement or novelty related behaviors that could lead to less stability, to an unstable or unsafe childhood or home environment, et cetera. So those were three like kind of different things, but does that get to what you were asking about, Zoe? Okay.
Absolutely. I kind of was thinking, like, I imagine like all the treatments are pretty similar and safe to overlap. So that's really helpful to hear. Thank you.
Awesome. I'm glad to hear it. Yeah. And like I said, that's one of the things that's really exciting and wonderful about this work is even folks who are nowhere near an ADHD or PTSD type diagnosis can benefit from learning these skills. Kids who are getting ready to or have just graduated from college and are entering the workforce, or employees in a big company. These are all skills and different functioning behaviors that are helpful and necessary for everybody. All right. So when we consider when we go from ADHD possibly being missed or misdiagnosed, and then the actual experience of untreated or unidentified ADHD, we can consider that because ADHD often presents differently in women than in men, it's less likely to be addressed. Women are less likely to be medicated for ADHD than their male counterparts. And this, plus the general experience of being a woman with ADHD, can lead to more complex and internalized life experiences. Many women experience what we can call an internal chaos. And this means that I keep using the word experiences, what they go through is less visible than maybe the hyperactive patterns of ADHD. It's often described as feeling overwhelmed, stuck, or having ongoing guilt. The experience of time might be non-linear, might be all over the place, and traditional task management strategies will likely not stick. Frequently, ADHD-related challenges are viewed as character flaws, and women see these as personality traits rather than malleable habits and patterns. There are different areas that we can consider when talking about being a woman with ADHD. One that we'll focus a bit on today is the area of hormones and life transitions. And while there's a great deal to be researched, there is a growing awareness of the intersection of ADHD and hormones in women. Puberty, pregnancy, perimenopause, and menopause all amplify symptoms. So really, all throughout a woman's life, there is an interplay between ADHD and how their body is evolving. During puberty, women or young women experience hormonal surges, especially with estrogen, which interact with an already developing brain, and combined with what we all know, having survived it, as the complexity of adolescence, complexity being the very politically correct term, symptoms may become more visible. We see things like mood swings, emotional sensitivity, and changes in sleep pattern, exacerbating challenges with focus and self-regulation. So you take an ADHD brain, and then you throw in all of the changing hormones and all of the craziness of being a preteen or a young teenager. And it can feel like a big mess for the person experiencing it, and maybe those around them. Later on, during possible pregnancy and postpartum, there are higher levels of estrogen and progesterone that may temporarily improve focus and emotional stability. So there's that brief possibility of a bit more ease. However, after birth, there's that rapid hormone drop, and combined with the experience of having a newborn, this may lead to heightened symptoms of anxiety or depression or other experiences. Interestingly, many women pursue a diagnosis after becoming a mother because now that they are responsible for somebody other than themselves, they can no longer mask as easily. They can no longer sort of hide or overcompensate in the same ways. With this in mind, many experience overwhelm and task paralysis prior to pursuing that diagnosis. Down the road, during perimenopause and menopause, women experience many hormonal fluctuations, which can affect their brain chemistry, and particularly in the neurotransmitters like dopamine and serotonin, which are crucial for managing ADHD symptoms. Essentially, ADHD is the mismanagement, the biological mismanagement of dopamine, of that reward and motivation chemical transmitter. This can lead to increases in difficulty with focus, memory, impulse control, and emotional regulation, which are all somewhat synonymous with those three categories of executive functioning we talked about earlier: the working memory, cognitive flexibility, and inhibitory control. When talking about this, one particular client of mine comes to mind. She is a 50-something year old female client with no history of memory loss conditions in her family. And she started coming to our sessions convinced that she was experiencing early onset Alzheimer's, absolutely convinced. So we talked, and she decided to go for hormonal testing and also neuropsychological evaluation. And it was revealed that she was experiencing perimenopause and had no cognitive degradation. And her symptoms were due to the hormonal changes in her body that were impacting her memory and focus. So while this was realization and sort of a life milestone that she had come to, there was a huge relief that it was actually due to this natural evolution in her body. During menopause, estrogen levels stabilize, but at a much lower baseline, which may mean there is more persistence in the increase in symptoms like reduced working memory, slower processing speed, and heightened emotional sensitivity. The cost of coping is essentially what has to balance out because a woman has ADHD or executive dysfunction. So I see so many of my clients perform at high levels, but it comes at a cost. They end up drained, ashamed, and burned out. A recent client inquiry had a description of what this individual was looking for. And at the end, they said, "I would love to understand how to stay productive without procrastinating and feeling guilty about not having enough time for personal care." So essentially, they were saying, like, I want to work with you so that I don't feel bad about not taking care of myself and I can be more efficient. Often, this cost leads to chronic overwhelm, low self-trust, and emotional dysregulation. And the constant reactivity and impulsive action can overtake the patterns of planning, responsive action, and proactivity. So if you are familiar with the spoon theory, whether it's for neurodivergent individuals or clients or folks you know with chronic pain, I hope this will align with your understanding of it. But the spoon theory is one that I share frequently with my clients because it's a really, really wonderful way to characterize the experience of ADHD. Essentially, it means that we have a finite amount of energy, which are represented by spoons. The spoons are meaningless. That it doesn't. You could use forks, you could use fish. It does not matter what they are. But we have a finite amount of energy units each day. And each activity we do, no matter how big or small or how fun or mundane, uses a certain number of spoons. So essentially, neurotypical people tend to have an easier time or a more predictable time keeping track of and appropriately doling out their spoons for these activities. And most tasks require what could be considered a reasonable number of spoons. Neurodivergent brains, like ADHD brains, often require more spoons for quote unquote normal tasks and activities. It changes day to day. These folks often start their days with fewer spoons than their neurotypical counterparts. When you add in factors like career and work, motherhood, social expectations, being a homeowner, etc., all of these are the use of spoons is exacerbated. And this can lead to daily spoon shortages or acute fatigue. And how, when, and why they expend and conserve energy is an ongoing decision. So, like I said, I love sharing this with clients because it's a way to quantify the experience of like, I don't know why some days I can get everything done and add on more things and I'm the most productive person in the world. And other days I can barely get out of bed. And when you start giving them more concrete examples or concrete terms to measure their energy by, they start to have a better understanding of how they're giving and rebuilding that energy or that spoon collection. Oops, there we go. Now we can transition into this understanding we have of ADHD and how it may manifest at different times and different moment or different periods in life to how it presents frequently with other conditions. So Zoe, you brought up experiences of trauma, and Kelly, you brought up that rejection sensitivity disorder that we so frequently see. And this is a great characterization of how ADHD rarely travels alone. Many symptoms overlap with other diagnoses, which can make it really easy to miss. And many clients experience quality treatment of these symptoms without catching the root executive dysfunction. So according to the CDC, and this was kind of mind-blowing to me, of women diagnosed with ADHD, 52.8% are also diagnosed with anxiety. So more than half. This compares to 31.7% of men with ADHD. 28.6% of women diagnosed with ADHD also are diagnosed with depression, which compares to 13.8% of men with ADHD. And keep in mind, you know this very well in the work that you do, but if a woman or if somebody has ADHD and anxiety, that doesn't mean that those are the only two things. They can also have this other wide variety of conditions and diagnoses. And executive dysfunction may be the hidden thread weaving through a client's narrative. If they've been through years of treatment and nothing seems to stick, sometimes treating the executive dysfunction, the very root of how they approach and manage different tasks in their life and their day-to-day experiences, sometimes managing that can bring everything down to a more overall manageable level. I always like to give lots of opportunities for questions because I am a big question asker, and I also give lots of asides as I talk. So any questions right now? All right. Keep
Real
chatting.
quick.
Oh,
I'm so sorry.
no, don't
Um,
apologize.
So I was thinking a little bit more about the comorbidities that you were just showing, and something I've actually been noticing with my clients is often seeing PMDD and ADHD going hand in hand. The research looks a little bit conflicting from what I've been looking at, but yeah, is that something that you've seen in your practice as well?
Um, yes. I do think there are a lot of reasons for that, not being a deep expert in premenstrual dysphoric disorder. Um, I I think when we look on the early side, many women with ADHD struggle to, throughout their lives, do things like track their cycles and manage the ups and downs of the hormones related to their cycles. So that is there to begin with. And then as their hormones and cycles begin to change, because they have not necessarily had a strong awareness throughout their lives of what it is like in the first place, they might not be aware as it begins to evolve and their bodies are changing. And so there might be this strange realization that, oh my gosh, all of a sudden my body is functioning totally differently, or why am I having these responses or reactions in such a different way? This was never something that would have bothered me before. And then, as we were talking about with the hormone changes in things like perimenopause and menopause, it can be impacted. But is that, and if I don't have like the best understanding of PMDD, I would love to hear like more specifically what you are interested in learning here.
No, that's really helpful to know. Yeah, I didn't think about it from that perspective as well.
Mm-hmm. Thank
This
you.
is kind of like a random question or like
Yeah,
comment.
great.
When you were mentioning hormone fluctuations during pregnancy, and it made me think of a few women I know who were like the glowing pregnant woman, so
Yeah,
happy they have ADHD, and it was they all reported to me as the best they'd ever felt. Um,
interesting.
and I had never maybe, I mean, possibly associated those things, but do you then see more likelihood of postpartum depression or postpartum anxiety with someone who has ADHD?
Mm,
Is that crash? Is there a crash or is there a sustained dopamine
right.
change given? I mean, if you're breastfeeding or do you know anything about that?
That's interesting. I can't say I know anything from a clinical or scientific
Okay.
perspective. I can say from my experience of working with women and also being in my mid 30s and being surrounded by women who are
Yeah.
constantly having babies right now, it seems, and a lot of my friends being ADHD. Um, I I think I see anxiety more present and harder to manage
Hmm.
um, postpartum. I have one client who I was working with this weekend, and she is trying to figure out her medication. She's 34 years old and has a 3-year-old daughter. And she has a longtime therapist. And she was telling me her therapist said, like, she has not seen the this client return to what would have been considered her baseline level of anxiety and functioning um, 3 years after having her daughter.
Hmm.
So I do think there are plenty of hormone changes, but I would be curious too, like what that might look like. Yeah.
Thank
Thanks.
you.
Yeah. All right. So we have this broad understanding of ADHD in women and all of the really delightful ways it can show up. And I do want to say, while it can be serious and sometimes scary or sometimes very overwhelming, there's also a lot of humor in it. And bringing some of what we'll talk about is how to normalize these experiences and bring a little bit of confidence and anchoring to them. And some of that is going to be through humor. Some of it's going to be through just understanding the wacky ways that our brains work and our bodies, and connecting with clients that way. But like I said at the beginning of our conversation today, this time is really intended to enhance and not replace the work you're already doing. So as a coach, and with your roles as therapists, we can play critical roles in the lives of our clients. And ideally, they'll work together. As a coach, I focus on day-to-day functioning and long-term habit development. We are really, in our work together, future-oriented, skills-based, and I act as a support for accountability. I look at and support clients with holistic ADHD management, which we'll talk a little bit about in a few minutes. We constantly talk about things like time management, follow through, self-awareness, and practical tools. And at the root of it, we are working to more seamlessly and easily align client behaviors with their goals. And when this goes hand in hand with the work that you as therapists do in many different ways, through or for supporting emotional processing and regulation, and building emotional healing, regulation, and the mental health diagnosis and treatment that you do, it is so impactful for the individuals who receive both therapy and coaching. When we look at the basics of managing ADHD, I cannot emphasize enough how frequently overlooked the big picture, the big five that we'll talk about, are not present. How often I start with a new client and I think, wow, this person really has it together. We can dive into some of the complex theoretical aspects of, time management, time blindness, or task breakdown, et cetera. And then I learn, for example, that they don't go to bed until maybe 10 p.m., maybe 3 a.m. It just depends on what they're doing and what they're interested in. Most of us have a dopamine window in the morning, so it's helpful to do hard things in the morning. But if you are sleeping until 11 or 12, let's say you're self-employed or you're a student, or let's say you don't go to bed until 1 in the morning, it's really hard to find that energy and motivation to do hard things first thing in the morning. Working with your clients, it can be helpful to set the expectation or help them set the expectation that they have a strict bedtime and their bed is for sleep and bedroom-related activities only, to avoid caffeine after mid-afternoon and minimize screens, and to consider that the amount of sleep you should be getting, so like 8 hours minus the amount of sleep you actually get. So if you should be getting 8 hours, but you only get 6, that's called sleep debt. That is the sleep you are not getting and you essentially owe yourself. The other area that I find really interesting that seems like such a small aside, but makes a huge difference is nutrition. And this can look like, oh, I got so busy and focused, I didn't eat, but it also really looks at what individuals with ADHD are eating. A lot of the time, I have clients who are looking for ways to, as they'll put it, get the most out of their medication or maximize the time that they're focused. And they're like, I'm on the highest dose of this medication. I've been working with my psychiatrist, nothing works. And I'll say, okay, what protein are you having? Like, are you eating protein? And they'll say like, oh, well, I put milk in my coffee. Like, that's great. What protein are you getting? Protein is, I would say, the simplest and most impactful change that somebody with ADHD or executive dysfunction can make. Whether it's a good protein bar or some protein powder, a little bit of extra animal-based protein or plant-based protein, whatever. No, we are not nutritionists, but when we're talking about setting a baseline for your body's chemistry and effective functioning, protein is central. It provides building blocks for the amino acids for dopamine and norepinephrine, which are the chemical transmitters that are impacted by ADHD. It helps stabilize blood sugar levels, which prevents the energy crashes that can exacerbate ADHD symptoms. And the more we can emphasize protein at every snack and meal, the more our clients will start to see that baseline improve. We can also look at exercise and considering exercise for focus being different for exercise from fitness. I'm happy to provide some resources on that if you're interested in more information. And helping our clients identify their team. So who is there to support them, whether it's the professional providers in their life or the people they have personal relationships with. And how can you add people? Thinking of neurodivergence as a line item budget and how can you balance this budget to have access to the skills? What can you add or remove to make it more stable is super, super helpful. And finally, if they can find a calendar system that works for them, giving that kind of predictability and stability can make a lot of space, can essentially save spoons for other aspects of their life. So earlier I mentioned that I'm a fangirl for this ADHD expert, David Noel. He often has trainings on like PESI and a couple other of the like on-demand webinar resource websites. I highly, highly recommend him. He's also a really engaging facilitator. And if you are working with your clients just on getting some basics, just on helping them develop some systems to manage some of that overwhelm and anxiety, one approach is the four-pronged attention management system. So they start with a place to dump all of their ideas, their tasks, etc. And it can help deactivate those rehearsal loops, okay, I need to do this, I need to do this, I need to do this, and instead externalize it so they have a place to access and they can clear some of that cognitive load out of their brain. If they take time to do that and to organize it in a weekly strategic planning session, when their basic to-do list gets too long, and do this about once per week, they can translate those to-do items or I need to do items to do next or action items. Bringing this into a slightly smaller scale, if they incorporate what can be called a morning huddle into a quick review of the day ahead, or what's your one thing? Like, what's the one thing you have to get done tomorrow or you absolutely want to get done? What's going to make tomorrow easier? That is a great time to identify that. And finally, incorporating some reflection and some self-compassion. That self-compassion is so central, so core to any of this other stuff working. Through being curious, compassionate, and trying for continuous quality improvement. So identifying what got done, building some working memory and reflection in there. Then look at what didn't get done and considering those as tomorrow or the next day's to-dos. And how can I get just 1% better? If you spent 10 minutes cleaning, or if you spent 10 minutes cleaning your closet today, can you spend 11 tomorrow? Can you spend just a little bit more time? And really working to remove that shame and blame and negative self-talk and shifting it into curiosity. Instead of saying, I should be cleaning my fridge out right now, shifting it to what would happen if I cleaned my fridge out? Or I wonder how it would be helpful if I took out 3 things, making it smaller and creating some curiosity around those tasks so that there's a little bit of that dopamine buzz, that interest in seeing what would happen. looking more specifically at the work you do, and without assuming anything, because I know the wide variety of approaches that therapists may take. There are really 5 strategies that you can consider. These are strategies that you can use in therapy sessions to better support women and really any clients with ADHD. And while they aren't one size fits all solutions, they're great starting points for more personalized and attuned responsive care. So start by normalizing executive dysfunction. This is where maybe reframing it as an executive functioning difference or a dopamine mismanagement, or even just using ADHD more transparently can be helpful. Also adding in some humor here, saying like, oh, that was my ADHD brain if you have ADHD, or, just bringing it up when it's relevant. Validating that there's a struggle, but also some real strengths. The fact that hyperfocus, being so tuned into something that the world around you kind of disappears, can be really hard and really frustrating because you might miss things, but it also enables you to zero in on a task and complete that task in a way that nobody else might be able to. Also validating the fact that there has been a lack of explicit instruction on skills. I have worked in schools since at least 2013. And even now, with the increase in social emotional learning and soft skill instruction, there's very little explicit instruction and continued support and reinforcement of these executive functioning skills. And recognize that there is no single way to do things. There's no right way to get most things done. After making ADHD and executive dysfunction a slightly more approachable and friendly experience and term, help your clients by building in the scaffolding for planning and transitions. So help them save some spoons by identifying where they're going to use spoons and how many spoons they want to use. So breaking things that they need to do into steps in a session, whether it's making that phone call to that family member they really don't want to talk to, or working on a cover letter for a job that they're really anxious about, can be a helpful way to plan a bit ahead to make it more predictable and more user-friendly. And helping your clients build rituals around task initiation and completion is super powerful. I am all for extrinsic awards with ADHD brains, with a lot of brains, really. I know that maybe that's not the most scientific perspective, but man, getting yourself that like really good chocolate bar or going to your favorite park for your afternoon walk can be really, really motivating. Incorporating rewards, mindfulness, and visualization are all powerful rituals. Naming emotional patterns and using reflective language and curiosity rather than pathology can also be helpful. And encouraging them to see the challenges and struggles they have as data and information rather than failures. So, your goal was last week you told me your goal was to clean your closet for 10 minutes. One time, or 2 times, you weren't able to do it 1 time, you did it 0 times. Let's talk about what happened. How exactly did you do that? Like, how exactly did you go through the week without doing it? And then what would happen if you spent 3 minutes cleaning out your closet? Make it smaller and approachable, but give it as much definition as possible. So all of the unpredictable elements and all of the unforeseen factors that will inevitably come up have space and there are spoons left for them. What can we study and take away from this failure or this success? And I wouldn't necessarily say failure, but that's just sort of the shorthand. What can we take away from this experience you had? When we explore time perception and self-trust, that this can help our clients reflect on how time feels and not just how it's tracked. And tracking wins and showing progress visually when possible can help consistently identify and frame regular things as wins. And that makes a big difference because, as I'm sure a lot of you see, especially in your ADHD female clients, many people, many women with ADHD can only see what went wrong or what did not get done. You could have an entire list checked off with the last thing that's like, take the garbage out, incomplete. And that's all that they might focus on. They are so used to the feeling of failure or letdown when they have set out to accomplish something that that's all they come to expect and all they can focus on. I have an executive functioning questionnaire that I have clients fill out at the beginning of our work together and then at different points. And consistently, it's a scale from 1 to 5. The question that I consistently get 1, which is the lowest on for all of my clients, is I can identify, plan for, and complete intended tasks and goals. And all of my clients see themselves as unable to do that. Finally, when supporting your clients, if you help gently challenge internalized beliefs, excuse me, that is a great way to help evolve and mold their thinking. Taking ideas like, if I cared more, I would remember, effort is, excuse me, effort is what's needed here. When we know it's not about effort, it's about reframing. We can reframe the struggles and challenges as a wiring issue and not a moral one. And through this, we can gently challenge perfectionism, people-pleasing, and that overfunctioning that can lead to burnout. I know that we've been sitting for a while. I want to reassure you we are almost through, and then we'll be on to questions. So there are a lot of resources out there and a lot of wonderful ones. If you're looking for more general resources, these are some that I like to recommend. They're really accessible and they're great. They can be great starting points. They speak to lived experiences, neurobiology, and practical strategies. That being said, if you have clients who are interested in learning more about sort of real life experiences, there's some great individual podcast episodes that I like to recommend. There are some excellent books about relationships and ADHD, or being the parent of a child, or being a parent with ADHD and having a child with ADHD, all sorts of different things. I think that we in the ADHD world are very lucky to have wonderful website resources like CHAD, ADDA, and Attitude. Attitude is also Attitude Magazine, and it has so many quick, really, really interesting, relatable articles. So these are just great places to start. And this slide is in the slideshow that was sent to you earlier. So I can send you like the actual slideshow instead of the little note-taking one if you want the slides, and you can have access to these. So as we wrap up today, I really want to emphasize that ADHD is real, and in women, it's very real. It is complex, just as any experience as a woman can be, and it's frequently misunderstood. If we continue to consider or evolve our thinking that ADHD is not necessarily a deficit of attention, but a mismanagement and a misplacement, I think this can open up a huge wealth of other ways that we can support our clients with ADHD. The work that you do as therapists is so, so important. In every conversation I have with a client who works with a therapist or who has worked with a therapist, they are so grateful for having support from providers like you. And it is such a safe space for them to be able to come to and learn about themselves, and sometimes take the hard work that's done in coaching, the more black and white work, and really pull it apart with support individuals like you. I would love to hear from you, whether it's questions, whether it's just a conversation, or if you have clients. I have recently transitioned from doing this work as a coach part-time into launching my full-time practice. And so I am excited to be actively welcoming clients and working with individuals of any profile, any background, whatever their ADHD and executive functioning needs are. So please feel free to send them my way, and I would love to support them.
And Hannah, before we jump into other questions, maybe should we share a little bit more about your process then if we are referring someone to you? Like, what does it look
Absolutely.
like? And then what is coaching with you generally kind of look like and time frame and all that?
Yeah.
And then how can we collaborate if, if we've referred someone to you or vice versa,
Great.
how is it great to be in touch together about over the client's care?
Wonderful. So I take my experience as an educator. Actually, I can stop sharing my screen now so that I can see all your faces. I really take my experience and expertise as an educator into the work I do as an ADHD coach. So my goal is for my clients to become their own greatest experts, to really understand how their brains work, what their patterns are, how to identify habits that are coming up, and to apply the skills and tools that we work on to those habits and patterns. So when I work with a client, we have a conversation before we dive into any formal coaching, and we go through a short process that helps frame some of their intentions and goals without me directly asking, what are your intentions and goals? Because they have probably thought about that and been asked that a million times. And from that, we pull apart some of the barriers that are getting in the way of what those intentions are. While I don't have a set curriculum or guide that I follow for every client, I do have a framework that I've developed within which I work that helps account for the ongoing priorities of the client. So if they have if they're applying for jobs or house hunting or something, and that's an ongoing interest or need that they have, or if they come each week with something different, there's a space for us to talk about that. But I also take time to educate on relevant and specific topics like time management or metacognition and mindfulness, etc. It's essential to build, in my opinion, to build in some mini goals and mini successes each time we talk, because like I was saying earlier, a lot of these folks are so used to that sense of failure of not being able to want to do something and then do it, that we first have to do a lot of groundwork to help them believe that they actually can set out to do something and do it. And then over time, we just scaffold and build through that. I don't require a minimum number of sessions. It's really up to what the client is motivated to do over time. And I love working with clients who see therapists, because I either communicate with the therapist with the ROI from the therapist's side, or I give clients things that they can talk to their therapist, or, we identify things they can talk about in therapy. Yeah. Does that help frame some of?
Yeah, that's perfect. Thanks, Hannah. Yeah.
Yeah. So now we have time for any questions. Any questions that may have come up during our conversation, or that you had coming into this, or like if you're like, I have this client, I have no idea what to do, etc. So go ahead and throw them out there.
Yeah, so I have a client that I'm definitely thinking about through this entire workshop, and two of the things that were coming up for the client that I work with are the sense of all or nothing.
Mm-hmm.
Especially when it comes to many things, like so as you talked about, one of the things when you were talking about cleaning, my client is an all or nothing cleaner.
Yeah.
right? And we do virtual, so I can see into her living room. And she also like will walk around the house with her computer with me, and she'll talk about it like, oh, I need to clean my house, but it's like all over. And like she has a friend that's a therapist, and we've been seeing each other for over a year, and she's talked about like getting baskets to be able to help clean. And like the thought of getting a basket, I think feels like failure.
Yeah.
Like, oh, I just can't clean. So I have two questions, but I was wondering like if you could just elaborate more on that kind of, and I think you talked a little bit about that, especially with women and the feelings of failure that come up.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh my gosh. That's so relevant. I was just talking to a client yesterday about all or nothing and how it's like if you aren't going to be able to do something to completion or successfully, it's not worth it. And so things just pile up and you're like, well, like it's better to have it this way than for me to feel bad about only being able to do part of it or not being able to do it the way I want to. I do think that with ADHD related conversations, being able to be really straightforward about what is going on in their brains and what a process is really helpful because there's so much abstract thinking and so much disorganized thinking that can happen that sometimes often our ADHD clients lose sight of the actual goal that they're trying to get towards. So the goal is not, can you clean your entire house in one day? The goal is, can you get to a clean house? So really creating some definition around what is the intention here? And then breaking that down to like, nobody is going to care if you do it all in a day or if it takes you 2 weeks, but you're not going to get any of it done if you don't start. You know, you miss 100% of the shots you don't take. So helping them find those smaller successes along the way, like consider it a success if you put 5 things away today, or if you spend this amount of time. If you can quantify it and help them see how together those quantifiable steps lead to the actual goal that they have and not what they have replaced their actual goal with, that can be really impactful.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah.
The other question I have is, so I work with a client, culturally, medicine is not something they want to talk about.
Sure.
It actually led to a huge rupture in our therapeutic relationship that we came back from, and it was really good.
Okay.
But like working with clients who are not at all, I mean, I have ADHD clients that are male, all on medication, all very happy with the medication when they're taking it. Female, it's culturally not something that she wants to talk about. And then also it's the sense of, I should be able to do it by myself and I'm a failure if I can't do it.
Right.
So when you work with clients, do you work with clients who are adverse to medication and what does how does that process even differ a little bit from clients who may be really well on medication?
That's a great question. I just to be transparent, I'm a huge supporter of medicating when it can be helpful, whether it's for ADHD or anxiety or diabetes or, you know, whatever your body's needs are. So that's my perspective as I come to this. This is where that framework of like the big 5 of ADHD management can be really, really powerful. The sleep, nutrition, exercise, team, and calendar or like resources can be really helpful to integrate some really unquestionable structure where the chemical structure might be lacking. So I absolutely do work with clients who choose not to medicate. The fact of the matter is, and this is based on both what I have seen and research, the most effective management for ADHD is a combination of medication and behavioral work. But there are lots of people who are not open to that. So
I definitely got yelled at. I was like, okay.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Yeah. What I will sometimes do, and I think I have the luxury of doing this as somebody who's not a licensed mental health professional. I don't know if this would be as appropriate necessarily for folks in your positions, but sometimes if medication comes up, I will sort of let it sit. I won't say anything. And then I will follow up with an email and say, I was thinking about our conversation today. If you are interested in learning more, here are some great resources. And there are a lot of articles out there that are like, medication is safe, it's great, and it's the same as medicating for any other health need someone might have. So thinking about that, like emotional reactivity and impulsive um, responses and the cognitive inflexibility that can come with ADHD, sometimes just giving it that space, taking a step back, and then bringing it up in a way that's very like, if you want it, you can take it, but keeps you kind of safe is more effective.
Thank you.
Yeah. Amisha.
Hi. I was wondering, how is it different when people like when elderly women like 65 and up
Mhm.
who, you know, they're on the fence or they're not really believing it, but they have these symptoms and like, do you work with elderly women or how does that kind of work when you're approaching this topic or talking to
Yeah,
them?
absolutely. I'm actually just finishing up a workshop with a family who is trying to learn about ADHD in support of their 70 something year old female family member who has untreated ADHD. So ADHD in um, older, I'm trying to think of a better word, of in women over 65 is an area that I love teaching about and learning about. And I have seen it a lot in my own life and seen the stigma that exists around it. I find that there can be opportunities to talk directly about ADHD, and I generally am all for, let's talk about it, let's use the words, let's be transparent about it. But really, if the goal is for us to support our clients, then just talking about the strategies and support structure is where our focus needs to be. It doesn't matter if we're saying ADHD or executive function challenges or skill specific challenges. If they are seeking help for these barriers to their success and you are able to focus on getting them that help, you don't have to use the specific term at all, really. With that in mind, once you've developed that trust around like, oh, like the strategies that my therapist recommends really do work, then you can start referencing, what we know about the intersection of hormones and things like ADHD or neurodivergent profiles, or, however you find the appropriate language, being able to normalize it and bring in some other references is a really appropriate way to start to circle back to what might be a necessary conversation. Does that answer what you were curious about, Misha?
Yes, thank
Okay.
you.
If you want clarification, I'm happy to try,
Yeah.
but yeah, just let me know.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Nicole, I see your little emoji hand up.
Yeah. Hi, Hannah. First of all, just thank you. This has been really helpful. And I really, really value the way that you have defined ADHD. And I totally agree with how language is so important, and we really need to change how we talk about this because, coming from a growth mindset about the opportunities that someone has, and I firmly believe that actually ADHD is a strength in some ways. And so I think, at least for me, because I think I've never been diagnosed, but I probably have it. And it's been a lot easier to digest and like grow in, using that language. So
Good.
yeah, I just want to say thank you about that. And then my question is actually kind of similar to Amisha's, but I'm just curious, like how you think about and talk about diagnosis or even ADHD
Mhm.
with someone who is very resistant to them, like first of all, just like very low self-awareness of like, and you're worried that this is gonna, they're already in kind of a state of despair, and
Mhm.
this is gonna kind of make that worse. And so I guess I'm just curious how you think about that and how you talk about that with someone. And maybe this is when you have a therapist come in, but I would imagine that there's times when your clients feel this way.
Sure, absolutely. I think that it is often up to what you know about that client. Some clients, you can identify that state of like, I'm out of options and despair. That's the place to be like, I have a way to help explain and define a lot of this and move forward. And then you can present it like that. And some really need to have some hand holding throughout the process of learning how to be self-aware. Like it's okay for you to study and look at yourself in a more scientific way, and then over time start to shift the conversation to defining things like, oh, well, that is, again, like looking at language, like when we talk about executive functioning differences, when we talk about this particular executive functioning skill, and et cetera, et cetera. And then starting to really lead with more curiosity. Like, well, when you think about this whole constellation of these amazing strengths you have, like your creativity and your ability to zero in and focus in on something you're passionate about, but also some of the challenges you have, like being able to shift some of that attention and being able to be flexible. Like, what, how do you see, how would you define that? Or like, what do you see in yourself? And then if they are able to say, like, well, I think my brain is different, or I think there's something different going on with me, that's a great way for you to say, like, are you interested in getting some definition around that? And if they're not quite there yet, asking them, like, are you interested in my perspective of like what might be helpful to better understand? I worked for a long time in an independent school in Shoreline, and it's a really, really high achieving, I would say competitive school. It's preschool through 8th grade, and I was working primarily with preschool through 4th graders. And so I had a ton of conversations over the years with parents about, I wasn't diagnosing anybody, but here are the strengths we see in your child. Here are a lot of the challenges we see. And what we are trying to do is have the best understanding of how to support your child. We want to understand how their brain works so that we can help them highlight and grow all of these amazing talents, skills, and opportunities that their brains give them. One way for us to do that is to have what's called a neuropsychological evaluation, blah, blah, blah. And that may tell us something like, in addition to their intelligence, it's going to tell us other things that might be part of their profile that make them who they are. So I think, I know that's sort of a smattering of approaches, but really just like helping clients understand that if they choose to get more information or get an evaluation, it's not changing anything about who they are. It's just giving us more information and them more information so that we can better understand how to support them and how to help them feel successful or help them feel better.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it sounds like leading with curiosity,
Mm-hmm.
helping them understand themselves,
Yes.
and
Yeah,
and giving them options of how they want to move forward. Okay.
absolutely. And also, I think really, I think oftentimes people shy away from seeking out an evaluation because they're worried it's going to just be a laundry list of all of the ways that they're failures and emphasizing that it is going to be a totally neutral view of the way that their brain works. So it's going to include things that are struggles for them, but it's also going to include all of the ways that they are unique and skilled.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you for the question, Nicole.
Yeah, no, that's really helpful. Thank you.
Arun, tell me if I said your name or if I should say your name differently.
No worries. It's just pronounced like autumn, but just want to echo Nicole, just really appreciate this space to talk about, this diagnosis and just the conversation around it. And I had a particular client coming to mind when you were talking about like the 5 things with like diet and sleep and all those things. And I was just curious how you navigated conversations around like the impact of medication.
Yeah.
And that, because I have often seen like medication like suppressing hunger or like they see like the benefits of the productivity that they have.
Absolutely. That's a great question.
And
Sorry.
then they can't sleep or they like sleep 3 hours and then they're taking these things and it's like working, but it's
Yes.
really like compromising a lot of these other things that could also support. And so I'm just curious about that.
No, that's a wonderful question. And I think the first thing that comes to mind with your question is how this emphasizes the importance or the positive impact that having routines can have. It's kind of going back to the spoon theory, like different things we do take different amounts of energy. And so if we can make some things routine, like unquestionably predictable, like what you have for breakfast or snacks you have available, and times that you eat those, even though ADHD type brains often seek out novelty and something new and exciting, those brains are able to better enjoy those and experience those if we are not using spoons for things like trying to survive without having eaten anything or getting enough sleep, like having a regular bedtime routine. When it comes to medication's impact on sleep itself, I think that my first response with a client is usually talk to your doctor, like have a conversation with your doctor, because I am by no means a medical professional or a medication professional. And it might be, something about adjusting the dosage or the timing. It might be about changing medication or adding a supplement or something. But I think, giving them the support and predictability that you can, as far as like, what are the things that you directly control? Sleep schedule, what you're eating, when you're eating, how you're exercising, like that's something that your client alone can do. And then adding in that team aspect, who is here to support you and how can they support you? They're not just here to write the script and send you on your way. They are here to make sure that that script is working for your whole life. Is that?
Yeah, that's really helpful. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Can I read one question from our therapist, Lily?
Yes.
So she had asked, this comes back to the time blindness, I think you'd already touched on, but what practical strategies do you recommend to help clients arrive to session on time or within an established grace period without reinforcing shame around timeliness? I'm especially curious about approaches that prioritize compassion over rigid expectations while still respecting my own boundaries and the structure of the therapeutic space. This particular client has attempted to block out extra time on their calendar and sets multiple alarms, but they don't seem to be making much of a difference.
I will admit, time blindness is tricky. It's really, really hard because time is so abstract. And for so many of us, every day looks different. Especially when it's like an appointment we have once a week or once a month or however. A lot of what can be helpful for folks is building routines around time. So not just I have an alarm that I will definitely ignore. But when you know you have something that you need to get to, what are the other predictable tasks or predictable steps you can take to make sure you get there on time? Is it, if it's a virtual appointment, is it making sure that the night before you have your notebook that you like to take your notes in right next to your computer? So 2 minutes before you're supposed to be on, you're not running around your house looking for that notebook. Is it making sure you have your charger ready? Is it making sure that if you have your appointment at 1 o'clock, you're eating lunch at noon, and that is enough time for you to eat lunch, digest a little bit, and go for your 10-minute walk or whatever it is? So some of it is around like the structural building blocks that go into setting you up to be where you want to be or do what you want to do on time. Some of it can also be around that self-awareness and that time awareness that is a slowly learned and built process, but it is learnable. So little exercises like, how long do you think it takes you to get ready for or get home from your office, which is a mile away, to your house for our virtual appointment, and have them give you a prediction for time and then actually time it. And then just making what they conceive of as time an actual reality and building from there. Sometimes it is just a matter of like putting some definition to assumptions.
Okay, awesome. Thank you.
Yeah. Any other questions that are up, or any just curiosities, like what is seen in an ADHD world?
I actually have another question.
Please.
I know that earlier you said that it's different areas, whatever the person wants to work on. I was just wondering and curious, like, what kind of mindfulness research or activities do you like, not prescribe, but you suggest them to do that has worked, or that are easy to do, or what are some things that your go-to, I guess?
Oh yeah. I'm happy to answer that. I really emphasize this idea that wherever our attention is, or whatever our attention is on, is the biggest thing in our minds and in our lives at that moment. And using that to our advantage in mindfulness practices can be really powerful. So some of what I try to do is reframe the perception and stigma that a lot of people have around mindfulness, because often you use the word or you say meditation and they think that they should be able to sit for an entire day with their eyes closed and do some deep breathing. And obviously people are going to be turned off by that. So I will usually start with some really, really simple, like, all I want you to do is sit here at the beginning of our session. You can close your eyes or you can zone out at something on the floor. And all I want you to do is take 3 breaths in for 3 counts each and 3 breaths out for 3 counts each. And just having them turn their awareness to something that they're choosing to it's a mindful activity, but it's also helping them bring some practice and intention to where their attention is. Over time, building on that, like choose a word, or do a little yoga. We'll do a little yoga flow together, and really pay attention to where your mind goes. And when you notice it, can you bring it back? Or pay attention to how your body feels. Where are you feeling discomfort? When are you feeling mad at me for making you do this one yoga pose that you hate? And just cueing that attentional check-in over time can build to an increase in their ability to be like, yeah, I was like, an increase in their metacognition. Like, yeah, I was walking the other day and I noticed like my breath was really shallow. And so I just started taking deeper breaths. And I'm like, that's it. You did it. Success. So emphasizing like how simple it is at its root and growing from there.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Hannah, just in honor of your time and time,
Yeah.
maybe when I send out the recording, I'll include your contact info. And so if you're open to it, then people can ping you if there's specific questions or to refer patients to you. Just echoing Nicole and Autumn and other people's comment of just really appreciate the like shame reducing, compassionate approach you take with this. And it really aligns with what we want is we're not here to fix people. We're here to come alongside and connect and help people feel connected and empowered to take care of themselves. So really appreciate that perspective with this.
Absolutely.
I had a cost question if
Yes.
you have a second. Just, I know I was looking at your website too. Do you offer a sliding scale? What do your rates start at? So when we're referring, because that's a big, cost is a big thing, especially right now in our economy, what that looks like for you.
Yeah. So my starting cost right now typically is $165 an hour. That being said, I care most about people being able to access this as a resource if they want to and if they need to. And so I'm always, always happy to have a conversation with people about how we can make this available and accessible to them. As far as I know, as of now, ADHD coaching is not accepted, or insurance is not covering ADHD coaching. Hopefully that'll change.
Not yet.
Yeah, not yet. Anyways, but I feel very passionately about making this accessible to those who want it.
And would you be open to, so I'm a part of a bunch of therapy Facebook groups,
Awesome.
putting your info on there for folks as well, because there's a lot of cross posting that happens as well.
I would appreciate any and all sharing of my information. Thank you so much.
Awesome.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you all so much. I am so glad to be connected to the self-space community. And I have a couple clients who have been sent my way from your team. And I have no doubt about how well supported they are. And they're really wonderful clients to work with. So I appreciate all of you. I appreciate what you do. And I look forward to supporting more of the self-space community. So thank you all so much.
Thank you so much, Hannah. Thanks for the thoughtful presentation.
Thank you.
And everybody, happy Friday. Have a wonderful rest of your weekend. Yeah, take care.
Thank you.
Bye. Thank